Welcome to lesson 5 of this Qi Men Dun Jia. Hi, my name is Douglas Chen. Today we'll talk about this particular topic called the 8 trigrams. Some people they call it Ba Gua, which is based on Chinese translation. So 8 trigrams is actually a derived of this yin and yang, and basing on last lesson on lesson 4, you can understand what does yin and yang stand for. So if you have not understand yin and yang, please go to the lesson 4, and then from there you understand the concept of yin and yang before proceeding to lesson 5. All right. So this 8 trigram. First, we must understand what does this 8 trigram, how does it derive? So in previous lesson, we talked about yin and yang. So this particular circle with 2 dots and a curve over here represent the extreme of yin and yang. Okay, so here the white color is stand for yang, the black color is stand for yin. So when I mentioned about yin and yang last lesson, we also talk about in every yang there's a yin, in every yin there's a yang. So that's it's not very extreme. So you must understand this concept before we actually proceed further. So next on, we need to understand where does this yin and yang and what does these 8 trigrams got to do in terms of the relationship. So we go step by step in this chart itself, and we will actually break down in this aspect. So we talk about the yin, we talk about the yang. Okay, so we break down into 2 parts. So and within the yin itself, we break them into Tai Yin and Sao Yang. And with this yang itself, we break them into Sao Yin and Tai Yang. Meaning that at the very first stage, we have already got yin and yang. So we break down into 4, okay, which is the 4 images over here. So within the Tai Yin, we break down into Kun and we break down into Gun. And at the same time, for the Sao Yang, we break down into Kan, and we break down into Shin. And Sao Yin, we break them into Zhen, and we break down into Li. So Tai Yang, we break down into Tui, and we break down into Qian. So you don't worry about all these symbols. As we go along in this lesson, we will define every one of them to understand the characteristics of these particular trigrams. Okay, so in Chinese, these 8 trigrams, we also call it Ba Gua. Okay, Ba Gua, right? So just now when we break down all the yin and yang into multiple levels, in the final level, we will break down into a total of 8 different symbols. So every one of them have their own name, have their own meaning. You see, so you may take a while to remember all this, but not to worry. It's not a must that you remember. It's just that you need to understand every symbol represents certain things and certain meanings. So the 8 trigrams itself actually are being formulated to within the circle of this yin and yang. So this become a Ba Gua. So always remember that this Ba Gua traditionally got nothing to do with religious. Okay, so a lot of people they thought that this Ba Gua is something to do with Chinese Taoism. Yes, there's some relationship, but in terms of religious wise, by right it should not be. It's just based on the I Ching, and from there we derive the trigrams and the yin and yang from there. Okay, so we move on. So as we move along this Ba Gua or this trigram itself, we will insert a few more information so that we know what does every one of them stands for. Every single trigram will have their name and a specific meaning on it. Okay, so as we move along, how does this trigrams got to do with Qi Men Dun Jia? If you see this chart very carefully, all the symbols over here This is Shin. This is Li. This is Kun, Dui, Qian, Kan, Gun, and Zhen. Is all located in every of these box, external box. The center is empty. So the 8 symbols is evenly spread in different places. And for your information, the places that they are located is always the same. Okay, it's always the same. So for example, this Kan itself is located at this box number 1. In the Qi Men Dun Jia chart, it will always be located in box number 1. It will never change. All right. So on and so forth for the rest of the symbols. Okay, so if you look at this, we zoom into box number 4. Just now we move on. In this box number 4, we zoom in for the purpose of your clarity. So here, this is Shin. Shin, remember that the Bagua is a symbolize of the environment. So the environment over here in box 4 represent certain things. And all the symbols over here in this Qimen chart also represent certain information. So the information is located at this Shen Gong. And from there, it represents the environment. You see, the environment, the place itself. So when you talk about Qi Men Dun Jia divination and Qi Men Dun Jia Bazi, we are able to decipher this information. For example, if they are in box number 4, it represents the Shin environment. Okay, we go to the next box, which is called the Li Gong. It stands for fire. So if you have some of this symbol, which can be very random, every divination and bazi will have a different symbol itself. So these symbols represent in the Li Gong and also represent a fire. Okay, so the environment is a fire environment. What does it represent? We also have to see the interrelationship between the symbol, the element, and the environment. You see, so that's how we derive the certain information about the person's character, the person's situation, and the divination results. So today's lesson, we're going to touch base on very specifically on the trigrams information only. So as we go along, we will base and integrate all this information together to ensure that you have a more holistic view of what is Qi Men Dun Jia and how to apply Qi Men Dun Jia in this aspect. Okay, so going back into this trigram itself, the trigram, these are the symbols in this aspect, and I'm going to go through one by one to share with you the basic information. It's only a very basic information. Of course, there will be very in-depth. I don't want to overwhelm you, but eventually you just understand the basic will be very, very good enough. Okay, so this is symbolized as Kun, which is located in box 2 and consist of 3 broken lines. Okay, and it means earth or land, and it's all yin. Remember, yin, is it good or bad? Yin is actually it's a darkness, it's black. So it's actually represent a female also the queen for the family, and it's the mother. So whether is it good or bad, depending on how you apply on this thing, which means that the box 2 is represent the extreme yin of the box. Okay. Next, we move on to Gun. Gun meaning an unbroken line with 2 broken lines. Also represent a mountain and can implies stiffness, hardness, and firmness. Okay. Next, we move on to this is called Kan Gong. So Kan Gong consists of 1 broken line and 1 unbroken line and 1 broken line after that. It can also represent a sunken area, water, or an absolute obstacle, something that is blocking you also, which means that it's, for example, a small river, then your two legs are actually stuck in there. That's also a representation. So the environment is that this is a place that you are stuck inside, whereby you are not able to move at all. Next, we go to Shin Gong. Shin. So located at box 4 and consider of two unbroken lines and one broken line also implies a wind. That means this is a very windy situation. So what does windy stand for? Wind stand for is moving. It's not strong wind, but it stands for wind. You see, so meaning that if you apply this in Qi Men Dun Jia, the environment is windy. Compared to the previous one, that is you're stuck in this river or stuck in this hole itself, then this comparatively, this windy situation of environment is far, far much more better, you see. So it's a matter of understanding environment, you know. Then from there, we get the basic concept of this, applying these trigrams in this Qi Men Dun Jia. So next we move to Zhen Gong. Zhen stand for thunder, stand for shock, stand for terror, which is considered of two broken lines and one unbroken lines. So Zhen Gong is signify thunder, shock, a shocking environment, a thunderous environment. Of course, comparatively, a thunder environment is good, meaning that it's very fast. Suddenly, it will just happen. So if you are in the situation of a Zhen Gong, then apparently this event or situation that's going to happen is going to be very fast. But of course, when it's very fast, meaning that after a while, it will be disappeared again, you see. So whether it's good or bad, it also depends on how you apply this in different situations. Okay, next we move to Li. Li stands for fire, which is a box number 9, which is the highest in the Qi Men Dun Jia box, with one unbroken line, one broken line, and one unbroken line. Okay, so fire is in box number 9, which is at the very top of this Qi Men Dun Jia box. So fire, high fire environment, which means that if your symbol is within the fire environment, what does it represent? We also have to consider your element and the symbol information. And from there, we're able to do a divination, we're able to do a parts chart. We can even based on that to do date selection and feng shui also, you see. So understanding this, all the trigrams itself, the environment, is one of the basic of understanding this Qi Men Dun Jia. Next, we move on to this symbol called Tui. Tui. So Tui consider one broken line and two unbroken line, which means speech or to speak. So in environment where you need to speak, you need to give speeches. So it represents something in this aspect. So of course, depending on how you apply the situation on the environment of box number 7, which is called the Tui. Last but not least, we call it the Qian. Qian Gong. Gong is a palace, also called a trigram. Okay. So meaning of Qian is 3 broken line, signify heaven. It's all yang. Remember, yang is all the positive energy and represent a country, that represent the head of state, also family, also the father of this person. So in this Qian Gong, it's all yang. So if your symbol is within all the yang, environment, a big country, a head of state or family, well, generally speaking, it should be quite good in this aspect. But of course, remember that in the concept of yin and yang, in every good there's bad, in every bad there's good. So when this yang itself is all yang, it doesn't mean that it's all yang. Also depending on how you're going to apply it in this situation. Okay, so let us see, go back to the Qimen chart itself. If you see all the Shin itself, Li, Kun, Dui, Qian, Kan, Gun, Zhen, is all surrounded in the external of these boxes in this 9 pillars. So 8 trigrams is input into these 9 pillars. So meaning that box 5 itself is actually an empty box. Don't have to worry about too much of it now because we are only covering the very basic of it. All right. So interestingly about this 8 trigram is that a lot of places in China, they use these 8 trigrams or Ba Gua to create a picture, create an environment for their houses. You see these particular pictures, you know, this is a field of plantation. And interestingly, they use the Ba Gua to make it looks exactly the same. And for them, they believe that using this formation, it helps them. Of course, there are other places where using the same philosophy, using the Ba Gua also. And there's also a city, a big city that actually use Ba Gua to, you know, the formation of the Ba Gua and the 8 trigrams to create the shape of that energy. Okay, so another one over here, which is the 8 trigrams. Very interestingly. All right, so here are the information about the 8 trigrams. Continue to learn Qi Men Dun Jia and go to the next lesson.